So I've titled this speech a little bit provocatively, Art for Art's Sake. It's rather daring, but I'm going to talk about it in three ways. Next slide. What's wrong, what's right, and what's next. So what's wrong? The contemporary arts have a bad name, elitist, incomprehensible. The public feels tricked. They don't understand what's happening. They can't figure out what it means. And the arts sector is full of lazy people. We don't have a real job, and we're just wasting time, as well as public money. To the extent that saying that art has a value in itself is not said. It's embarrassing. Shh, don't say that. Nobody says that. And yet, what they can bring to society is extremely important in this moment in time. And I'm very happy that the speakers before me also alluded to some of these qualities. The American philosopher Martha Nussbaum has written eloquently about the qualities that arts and arts education can bring. Imagination, considering how putting together different elements can bring something new. This gives us the capacity to innovate. The analytical skills to be able to compare and to critique, for example, history, narratives, propaganda, or marketing. This gives us the capacity to think independently without being manipulated. Critical questioning is a common factor in art. It uncovers hidden meanings and motivations, and thus allows a democratic debate. Empathy, to be able to understand why people are doing something, even when we don't agree with them. Thus, to be conscious that we're part of a global society. And finally, the capacity to engage with complexity, with different layers of meanings, different layers of messages. This is what we need in order to cope with this information-full world, which has so many competing priorities. And yet, we're seeing the complete absence, or else a severe cutting back of public support for the arts and arts education. Instead, the priority now is for a certain kind of education, which many of us would call training, that is, learning how to do something, rather than education, which is learning how to think. Economic growth is now the guiding principle for all of our policies. Students are taught to value only concrete products and outputs with quantifiable results. In this vision, humans become objects, either to buy or to produce products. And those products include these beautiful toxic financial products, which we've heard so much about lately. And I have a question. If artists are so unnecessary, why are they still persecuted, tortured, and killed all over the world? So what's the deal? What are the problems? What's wrong? First of all, there's a lack of definition. People talk about the intrinsic value of the arts, but it's really hard to figure out what that is and to clearly express it. And we, the arts sector, are often complicit in this. And yet it's simple. An artist puts ideas, images, concepts, stories together in new ways, stimulating new associations between them. We, the public or participants, we're surprised, uncomfortable, unsettled, annoyed, or charmed because we're being provoked to put our expectations and our habits to one side and to think differently, to see differently from another perspective. Although it's true that art can be entertaining and also entertainment can be art, there is a difference. Art tends to provoke this click, this shift in our expectations, this shift in our perception, whereas entertainment tends to comfort and to reinforce our habits. I can see that many people might want to contradict this, but like other forms of research, the artistic method is characterized by trying out new ideas, working with new materials, making risky choices in order to create something new, and inviting the viewer to just stop and consider. Lots of examples. Contemporary visual artists such as Robert Rauschenberg people before him and after him, have taught us actually to look at things in our daily life in a different way. Junk, found objects. John Cage taught us how to listen to all of life and not only music, which is made by a musical instrument. Contemporary dance taught us that the whole range of human movement is beautiful or ugly or architectural or evocative, and that not only the dancer, but every single part of the human body can express its own independence. Theater companies, such as the Worcester Group, showed us how much interesting information is intersecting in our brains at one moment, and how we have to make new meanings out of this mix. I could be certain that people in the room who know those artists might define them very, very differently, but that's also a quality of art. The second problem we have is education. All statistics in every country continue to show that appreciation of the arts is linked to the level of education. And yet, art is really not taught in most schools. It needs to be taught from an early age. Experience with the arts, from your family, from your friends, from your school, really helps us to be comfortable with this sensation of being jolted out of our expectations. If not, it's not very comfortable. It's not very fun. We don't have the tools to puzzle it out. We don't have the clues. We don't have the patience. And there's less and less good coverage of the arts on TV and in the newspapers. When it's there, it's often incomprehensible. The third, art sector itself. Artists are extremely uncomfortable about the instrumental uses of their work. And anyway, we're not very good at arguing our case. Artists and arts organizations, not all of them, but they tend to take offense when they're told that their work is only important because they provide employment, they help the city rejuvenate, they boost the economy, they give confidence to the street kids, they help the immigrants regain their dignity. They're an asset to any graduate seeking a managerial job. They speed up the healing process in patients, they keep elderly minds bright, they teach primary school children maths and spatial relationships. There's been scores of studies which prove all of these benefits. And Nussbaum even argues that the arts are a prerequisite for democracy. All of these so-called instrumental uses are true, and we in the arts sector actually should be proud of them. Yet, the artists want to be valued for what they are: art makers, art producers, art promoters. And can you blame them? Imagine the scene in the doctor's office. Thanks, doctor. Because of your work, my factory is running really well. No, we don't say that. Art is a good. You talked about it, un tipo di bene. Art is a good. Health is a good. Education is a good, despite the fact that an educated population also produces many secondary effects. Last, and no, the other slide. Fixed beliefs. Sad to say, but psychologists have told us that people do not change their beliefs when faced with facts. So whatever statistics we might come up with about the benefit of the arts to our communities, our cities, our countries, the facts will not change the opinions of those who think that they're useless and that they should be paid for by people who have excess money to waste. In fact, trying to convince these people through facts probably will only reinforce their negative position. People change because of the experiences that they have, the experiences that they feel. And interestingly enough, this is also something that art is extremely good at, making people feel. Okay. So what's right? Well, a good thing I think that we have to remember is that it is the intrinsic value of anything which permits it to have secondary or instrumental uses. So we shouldn't be afraid of this word. A beautiful park, this beautiful park here, to sit in every day, to rest and to think, is an unquantifiable common good. Although I suppose it could be studied, the negative ions in the air which are producing, being produced by the fountain. But it's the feeling of quiet, the ability to think, to take time, which is good about it. It's the beauty of the park. There's nothing wrong with unquantifiable, essential values. Let's bring them back into our discourses. We have become ashamed of them. Art's good. It makes you think and feel and imagine. And that's about being a human being, and that's okay. The second good thing is that the arts are increasingly accessible. Many arts organizations and artists are using education services to give those tools, give those clues to a non-trained arts public, to encourage them to participate so that the artist actually is the public becomes the artist, or at least is an integrated factor into the creation process. And more artists are working on the edge of the sector. So they're working with non-professionals, they're working with other sectors, they're trying to bring personal stories of people who are working in other walks of life. The examples, I think, are endless. The internet, the digital environment, the social networking plays no small part in this either. There's an increased access to making, sharing, and enjoying art. Brian Eno, when did he say? It must have been in the 60s. He said that one day people will not need musicians. They'll be able to make and share their own music. Here we are. Indeed, I think the arts could be even more open and accessible if the amateur, professional, and commercial arts were seen as parallel and complementary parts of a whole ecology, instead of too often being the subject of petty quarrels about quality. Another good thing, probably some of you have read about social capital, bonding and bridging. Well, the arts have been networking and creating this social capital for a long time. In Teatro is a very good example of this. I work for a network called IETM. It's a network for contemporary performing arts. It was born here in the park, in the villa, in 1981 with about 7 people. Now we have 550 organizations, including theaters, companies, festivals, cities, ministries, international organizations from about 55 countries. What do they do? And what do the hundreds of other arts networks do in Europe and growing all over the world? They share information. This what else you said in your speech, this knowledge sharing, that is a good in itself. Of course it produces the open source software. Of course in the arts world it produces results. Artists get more tours, ideas and concepts change, people train each other, knowledge is transferred. It's the sharing of the information through the networks which is the important part. In Teatro was also inspired by our IETM meeting in Stockholm in April, and have taken this idea of whose story is it, looking at these different elements to bring them into this year's manifestation. So finally, the arts sector is also reaching out, opening up, using its approaches and methods to link to other sectors and engage with current challenges. Artists react and respond to the world around them. And just as all kinds of other boundaries are blurring, artists are also expanding their range of actions and their interests. As one visual artist put it to me, my art material is no longer just paint. My art material is the whole world. 2 projects which are interesting. Imagine 2020 is grouping together 11 performing arts organizations in Europe to look at climate change, the causes, the effects, to raise awareness about it, and also to help to provoke people's change in their habits. Another project which is finished now, Sostenuto, took 7 arts and universities to work together to look at the capability of the culture sector to promote social innovation in the Mediterranean countries. Artists and researchers are investigating the arts' potential for stimulating a climate of change to prepare us for the kinds of paradigm shifts in our behavior and in our minds, which we're going to have to go through in order to combat the global effects of all kinds of environmental changes. So, what's next? What do we have to do? I think we need more research into the intrinsic qualities of the arts. And the arts sector has to stop being ashamed of it. We have to start talking about it. Politicians have to start thinking about it and talking about it. Communicating it well. Secondly, the art sector has to let go of its protectionism. We are special, we are unique. Everybody's special and unique. Every sector is special and unique. We've had town planners, we've had open source. Everyone has their unique qualities. Art is often said to have to be outside society. But actually, you have to be inside of a society in order to know it, in order to look at it differently, and in order for your vision on it to be meaningful to that society. Third, arts networks, associations, festivals, groupings, everybody should encourage people in the sector to open up, to open their minds, to practice looking at what they're doing through a different light and to use different words to describe it. But also, we have to be connected to our communities. We have to collaborate with our communities. We have to look at what we're doing and actually judge whether we actually do what we say. Third, I think we need ever-increasing transparency into artistic processes. My husband's an artist. He completely disagrees with me. But it might not be for everyone. Some people don't want to be told what to look for in a work of art. But I can tell you through long experience that many, many, many people really appreciate having these clues, and then they can make up their own mind. It fits into a kind of a Europe which is based on humanistic values and not solely economic ones. And I know what I'm saying sounds absolutely ridiculous in this day and age. So what approach do we need to make? Well, the new approach which is called for highlights exploration, experimentation, research, and forecasting. This is precisely the artistic approach. It uses creative intellectual leaps, trial and error, risk-taking, critical analysis of myself and of my surroundings, a heightened sense of sensitivity, and the synergies of working with others. Thank you.